Right, well, for a
Well, why
start,
do you think women wear rouge?
I have absolutely no idea, but
Right,
I will tell you.
That's really not a very good answer.
Well, yeah, you said before there were lots of things you don't know the answer to, but I'll tell you
Yeah,
one
but
thing.
I'm not criticizing your perspective on this. You're criticizing mine, so I'm presuming
Okay,
you
but
have an alternative idea.
That right there. That's the moment this entire hour-and-a-half interview boils down to. This wasn't just a debate. It was an autopsy of a failed conversation. On one side, you have Dr. Jordan Peterson attempting to have a nuanced, multi-layered discussion about biology, psychology, and symbolism. And on the other, you have an interviewer so completely locked into one single ideological framework that she is physically incapable of hearing what he is actually saying. And we are absolutely going to break down that specific, incredible exchange. But to really understand why that conversation went the way it did, you have to see the foundation of sand it was built on. You have to see how, for the entire interview, she wasn't actually debating him. She was debating a caricature of him that she had built in her own mind. In today's video, we're going to break down the key moments of this interview. We're going to analyze her arguments, his counter-arguments, and the critical points that she completely ignores. You're going to see a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview, and a textbook example of the ideological possession that Peterson so often warns about. This is a deep dive. Let's get started. The entire conflict, every missed point, every straw minute, all starts here, with the interviewer's fundamental, non-negotiable premise that our society is, first and foremost, a tyrannical patriarchy. This isn't just a belief for her. It's the only lens she has. Watch what happens when Peterson tries to challenge this foundational premise.
I mean, that's my idea of the patriarchy, which is a system of male dominance of society.
Yeah, but that's not my sense of the patriarchy.
So what's yours?
Well, in what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labour.
Very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely?
This is the entire argument in a nutshell. Her definition of dominance is a one-way street. She only looks at the very top, the hyper-successful, and uses that tiny fraction of men to define the entire male experience. This is a classic rookie-level mistake in statistics and sociology. She's cherry-picking her data to support a pre-existing conclusion. Peterson does exactly what a good-faith intellectual should do. He complicates the narrative. He says, okay, if we're going to talk about group outcomes, let's look at the whole picture. And the whole picture is what he calls the high-stakes game of male life. Men are overrepresented at the top, yes, but they are massively overrepresented at the bottom. More prisoners, more homeless, more suicides, more combat deaths, more workplace deaths, worse in school. He's not saying this to be a whataboutism. He's using data to challenge her simplistic male dominance premise. He's showing her that the world is far more complex than just oppressive versus oppressed. He's showing her that the system is not universally rigged in favor of all men. But watch her response to this. Does she engage with his data? Does she say, that's a good point. How do we square the fact that men are both at the top and the bottom? No. She completely ignores it.
What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper-successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely appropriate.
But I could say equally well that most rape victims are women. You know, terrible things happen to people of both sexes.
And you could say that with perfect utility, but that doesn't provide any evidence for the existence of a male-dominated patriarchy.
Did you see it? He presents a mountain of data showing male disadvantage at the bottom, and her only response is to bring up rape victims. She cannot, or will not, engage with his central point that her patriarchy model is flawed because it only looks at one side of the ledger. She is so locked into this worldview that any data that contradicts it is just deflected. This is not a discussion, it's a dogma. This inability to see complexity is the first crack in the foundation, and it leads directly to the next major misrepresentation, The Lobsters. Okay, this is probably the single most famous and most willfully misrepresented part of 12 Rules for Life. The interviewer, once again, frames Peterson's point as a crude, literal, might makes right argument. She's been told this is what he means, so that's what she's going to attack, regardless of what he actually says.
Because I think that the thing that people take away from that is male lobsters compete for female lobsters, and that says something about society now, that men need to be dominant in society. Because if lobsters do it, then there is something that we can read about humans from that too.
There's nothing in that chapter at all that suggests that the way that men should succeed in human hierarchies is a consequence of the exercise of power. There's not one line in that entire book that claims that, because it's not what I believe.
He's exactly right. She's attacking a ghost. Let me be very clear for anyone who hasn't read the book. Peterson's lobster argument has nothing to do with men should be dominant. His point is twofold. 1. Hierarchies are not, as she believes, a social construct of the West. They are ancient. The fact that we share the same basic neurochemistry for tracking Statistes' serotonin system with a creature as ancient as a lobster proves that hierarchy is a fundamental part of life on Earth, stretching back hundreds of millions of years. 2. The way you move up that hierarchy is by facing the suffering of the world forthrightly, which makes you competent. And in successful human societies, it is competence that is rewarded, not brute power. She reduces this complex argument about ancient neurochemistry and competence into Lobster's fight, so men should be dominant. It's an embarrassingly bad faith interpretation. But she doesn't stop there. After he corrects her, she doubles down and just calls his science bollocks.
Okay, my big problem with the lobsters is that it's scientifically bollocks. Right? It's just, you cannot read across from lobsters and what they do to what humans do.
Of course you can. That's why serotonin works on lobsters.
But it works in two different ways. So if serotonin makes lobsters more aggressive, it makes humans less aggressive. Right? That's what happens.
No, that's not right. Serotonin makes human beings more dominant but less aggressive. And the only reason it makes them more dominant is because they're less irritable and they're less defensively aggressive. So it's not bollocks. I know my neurochemistry. So if you're going to play neurochemistry, let's go and do it.
That was a fatal mistake on her part. She tried to outscience a clinical psychologist and research scientist on his own turf. Notice her claim. Serotonin makes lobsters more aggressive. It makes them less aggressive. That's just word salad. She's just repeating something she vaguely heard to try and sound smart. Peterson corrects her with actual science. Serotonin is related to dominance, social status by reducing defensive aggression and irritability. This is true for both. A high serotonin lobster is the one that doesn't need to be defensively aggressive. It's calm, it's confident, it's the king. It's the same with humans. SSRIs which increase serotonin don't make people aggressive. They make them less anxious, less depressed, less defensively aggressive, which allows them to move up the competence hierarchy. The continuity is the entire point, and she just dismissed it as bollocks because it did unfit her patriarchy as a social construct narrative. This is strike two. She's rejected his critique of her sociological premise, and now she's rejected his biological premise. Now, let's look at what she does with his psychological premise. A huge part of Peterson's work is based on Jungian psychology, mythology, and archetypes. He speaks in symbolic language. This is a complete nightmare for an ideologue, because ideologues are almost always hyperliteral. They can't handle nuance or metaphor, because metaphors can't be neatly filed into us versus them, or oppressor versus oppressed. Watch this perfect example. She takes one of his most profound symbolic concepts and flattens it into a chauvinistic insult.
Well, one of the things I want to come back to is this idea. So that you say in the book, there is masculine order and feminine chaos.
No, actually, I say that those are symbolic representations of the two things.
He has to stop her immediately. She hears masculine order, feminine chaos, and her brain translates it to men are orderly and good, women are chaotic and bad. This is not what he's saying. He's talking about ancient archetypes. Order symbolically, masculine is the known, its structure, it's safety, it's the walls of the city, it's the rules. but it's also tyranny and rigidity if it becomes too dominant. Chaos, symbolically feminine, is the unknown. Its novelty, its creativity, its potential, its nature. But it's also destruction and fear if it's not integrated. His entire point is that a healthy person and a healthy society balances the two. You walk the line between order and chaos. But her ideologically driven mind can't hear any of that. It only hears masculine order and feminine chaos as a power dynamic. She has no capacity for symbolic thought, and that total lack of understanding of sociology, biology, and symbolic psychology is the context you need. That's why she was so completely unprepared for the one question that ties all three of those things together. And here we are. The main event. We've established that the interviewer believes in a patriarchal tyranny, that biology is bollocks, and that she can't understand symbolism. So when Peterson asks a question that is simultaneously biological, sociological, and symbolic, this is the full, amazing exchange.
Right, well, for a
Well,
start...
why do you think women wear rouge?
I have absolutely no idea, but
Right,
I will tell you...
That's really not a very good answer.
Well, yeah, you said before there were lots of things you don't know the answer to, but I'll tell you one thing.
I'm not criticizing your perspective on this. You're criticizing mine, so I'm presuming you have an alternative idea. Why do you think women wear makeup?
I think there are an enormous number. Let's go back to why women wear rouge, because it reminds men of ripe fruit. Okay, first of all, not all ripe fruit is red. Why would you want to...
we evolved color vision to detect ripe fruit.
Do you want to eat women? No. I think unless men are having sex with ripe fruit...
You might want to taste them.
That's not really where... And where is the evidence that women who are redder in the cheeks have more offspring?
What do you think happens during the sexual flush?
But that's the key point, isn't it? Is that you would expect, actually, if this is a sexual selection, that women who are redder would have more children. We would get progressively redder over time.
One of the hallmarks of youthful skin is the proclivity for it to flush red. And yes, youthful women have more children. It's a primary sign of fertility.
I think you're using...
Wait a second here. What do you think women wear makeup for? Come on, if you're going to go after me on this,
okay.
Let's women. People say, well, women wear makeup to feel better about themselves. It's not a very deep analysis. Why makeup? Why facial makeup?
I'll tell you why I wear makeup, which is to stop the comments that I would get if I didn't wear makeup. And my gender, I always say my gender is low maintenance, right? I don't feel particularly like a woman inside. I don't really know what that would mean. But what I try and do is try and look, in the same way that you get black women who talk about the problem with natural hair, is it's seen as unprofessional, right? And as a woman, if you don't wear makeup, that is seen as a political choice. That is seen as something that, you are...
So you wear makeup to protect yourself from what? From tyrannical men?
No, but and tyrannical women as well, I would say.
This is just perfect. Let's break this down. First, Peterson asks a simple, profound, biological question. He's clearly alluding to the fact that rouge, or blush, mimics the sexual flush. It's a signal of youth, health, and fertility. It's a sexual signal. This is basic evolutionary psychology. He even connects it to our color vision evolving to see ripe fruit, which is the same red color. It's a deep, interesting, scientific point. Second, the interviewer's response: I have absolutely no idea. A feminist journalist whose entire career is built on analyzing gender dynamics claims to have no idea about one of the most universal female social signals in human history. It's an astounding admission of either ignorance or dishonesty. Third, she recovers and tries to answer. But look at her answer. She says she wears makeup to avoid negative comments and to not be seen as unprofessional or making a political choice. Do you see what she did? She took a question about biology and sexual signaling, and she immediately filtered it through her one and only lens: social oppression. She cannot conceive of a world where women do things for their own reasons, or for biological reasons. In her world, women only do things as a reaction to a tyrannical, oppressive society. Fourth, Peterson sees this instantly, and he lays the trap. He says, so you wear makeup to protect yourself from tyrannical men? This is the checkmate moment. He's not stating his own belief. He's mirroring her worldview back to her. Yes, showing her that her own answer leads directly back to the patriarchal tyranny she has been spouting the whole time. She is so trapped in her ideology that she couldn't give a single answer about female behavior that isn't about male oppression. She literally proved his point for him. It's a complete cell phone. And the tragedy is, she's so ideologically blind, she doesn't even realize she did it. If you need one final piece of evidence that this interviewer was not operating in good faith, this is it. Peterson brings up the single biggest piece of scientific evidence that contradicts her. It is all a social construct worldview. This is called the gender equality paradox. Yes, basically saying, if your theory is right, that gender roles are just oppressive social constructs, then in the most equal societies, those roles should disappear, right? Well, let's look at the data.
We were talking in the 18th...
They haven't in Scandinavia, they've magnified.
Okay, but we were talking in the 18th...
That's actually an important exception because Scandinavia has gone farther than any other area, the Scandinavian countries, in establishing egalitarian social policy. And the differences in interest and career choice and personality between men and women have grown as a consequence, not shrunk. Which is exactly the opposite of what the social construction is predicting.
But also just suggests that they're malleable, actually, rather than fixed.
Well, of course they're malleable. No one would ever suggest otherwise.
Right. So that's what I mean. So I
but
think
they're
it's a
not
blended book.
malleable in the direction that the social constructionists presume. As you flatten out the sociological landscape, you maximize the biological differences. No one saw that coming.
This is the kill shot. The most egalitarian societies in the world, the ones that have the most social support, the most freedom of choice, the least amount of patriarchal tyranny, are the ones where women and men become most different in their choices. Women, given total freedom, become more likely to choose feminine careers like nursing or teaching. Men, given total freedom, become more likely to choose masculine careers like engineering or trades. This data proves that these differences are not, as she claims, just a result of oppression. They are a result of innate, biological, real differences in temperament and interest. This is the single most powerful counter-argument to her entire worldview. And what does she do? Does she engage with it? Does she ask for the studies? No. She just talks over him, gets confused, and tries to change the subject to paternity leave. She had to ignore it, because if she acknowledged that fact, her entire ideological house of cards would collapse. So, why do women wear makeup? According to Jordan Peterson, it's a complex, multi-layered behavior rooted in millions of years of evolution, designed to signal health, youth, and fertility, all things that are genuinely attractive. According to this interviewer, it's because she's afraid of getting mean comments from the patriarchy. Which of those explanations sounds deeper, more respectful of women's agency, and more aligned with reality? What we watched today was not a debate. It was an interrogation by an idiot. Every complex point Peterson made was flattened, twisted, and misrepresented to fit a predetermined narrative of patriarchal tyranny. His biological argument about hierarchy was twisted into men should be dominant. His symbolic argument about archetypes was twisted into men are good, women are bad. His sociological argument about male disadvantage was just completely ignored. And finally, his evolutionary argument about makeup was twisted into, you guessed it, women are oppressed by tyrannical men. She proved his point better than he ever could. You cannot have a good faith, productive conversation with someone who is not willing to see the world as it is, but only as their ideology demands it must be. But that's just my analysis. What did you think? Was this one of the most frustrating interviews you've ever seen? Which one of her arguments did you find the most dishonest? Let me know your full thoughts down in the comments. I read as many as I can. And if you appreciate this kind of in-depth breakdown and analysis, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. It's the #1 way to support this channel and make sure these videos get seen. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.